Hi everyone, welcome back to Success with Steph, where on this channel I just talk about all things careers and all things lifestyle. And in today's video, I am going to be answering a question that I actually got through my Instagram DM. So do make sure that you head over to Instagram and give me a follow on @SuccessWithStephUK, where I'm happy to answer all of your legal questions and productivity questions there too. Now today's question is all about how to answer that commercial awareness question. Tell me about a recent news story / article that you have read. Now, this question can come up at pretty much any stage. It can be in your written application, it can be in your face-to-face interview, it can be in your video interview. So it's important that you understand what structure to use to really help you show the person who is listening to your answer that you know what you're talking about and you have actually been keeping up with your commercial awareness. Now, as ever, I'm going to break this down into a couple of different parts. First of all, looking at why are the interviewers normally going to be asking this question? What are they looking at? Then we'll have a look at the perfect structure that I think you should be using. And then we'll just have a look at some different examples and ways that this question can come up for you that I personally have seen. So hopefully you find this really, really helpful. And if you think there's one person who could have some use out of this, please do make sure that you share this video with them. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. So first things first, why are you actually being asked to tell someone about the latest news story or article that you have read? It's pretty simple, really. The legal industry is a client-facing industry, right? So what does that actually mean? It means that clients are coming to you for your judgment on particular areas that, yes, they may know a bit about, but you are the expert in. Now, how can you become an expert in something? By staying on top of the latest trends and news in that particular area. So it's as simple as that. So whether you're looking at things like the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, or some other financial publication, or if like me, you're looking for all the free stuff that gives you the exact same detail, things like Wake Up to Money on BBC5 Radio Live, things like all of the great and amazing Instagram pages that I'm about to put on screen for you right now that you should be going to follow so that they can also help you. You can get the same information there, and it equally shows that you are as commercially aware as the next person who is reading the Wall Street Journal. So you're all good there. So now we've got that out of the way, what kind of structure should you be looking to implement in your answers then? Well, I think this is the one thing that is going to stay the same regardless of whether your answer is a written answer, a spoken answer for a video interview, so you don't actually have someone talking back at you, or whether it's a spoken answer at a face-to-face interview, so maybe you have the opportunity to ask some questions or something like that. Regardless of where this question has come up, it's really important that you follow this structure that I'm about to lay out for you. Why? I don't pretend to be an expert, but this is a structure that has worked for me. And I am someone who, throughout my whole application journey and throughout my legal journey to date, the main way that I personally keep up with my commercial awareness is through two things. First of all, I watch the 10 p.m. ITV news every evening without fail with my mum. Why? Because that's just something that my mum likes us to do. But it's a great way for me to stay commercially aware because I'm always hearing about the news that's going on around in the world. Now, the second way that I actually keep commercially aware is that from Monday to Friday, every morning, I tend to listen to Wake Up to Money by BBC5 Radio Live. Now, it's a great podcast in my personal opinion, and I'm a bit more of an auditory learner as opposed to a visual learner. So I do like to just have the news come to me orally. But if you prefer to read things, feel free to get any of those publications that people are always talking about. Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, The Economist. Only thing I would say there is that you do normally have to pay for these things, but if you're in university or if you're working, maybe do check to see whether they already have a subscription under that company name, because you might actually be able to access it for free and you don't know that you can do that. Now, coming back to the structure, how do you actually answer these questions when they come up? I think there are four main things that you want to try and do. The last thing, I would say only do it if you're in a face-to-face interview. If you're doing the video interview or if it's a written application, you probably don't need the last thing, but we can still speak about it anyway. So what's the first thing you should be doing? Well, you're going to need to summarize the story. And this is one of the most basic things that I think a lot of people actually forget to do. You can't assume that the person who is asking you this question knows about the story that you're talking about. They might not actually have read about it, because we don't read about every single news story that comes up every day because nobody has time to do that. You tend to read about the ones that interest you, right? So if you pick a story that the person who has asked you the question hasn't actually read, that's fine. It's not a big deal, but it is then your responsibility to summarize it in a way that they can actually understand what it is you're talking about. So how much of your answer should be a summary? Now, I don't actually think it needs to be that much. I think if it's a written answer, it's obviously going to be dependent on how many words you've been given, but I would say maybe 1, maximum 2 sentences should be fine. You shouldn't really need more than that to write a concise summary, because remember, you are meant to be condensing the information. You shouldn't just be repeating what you've seen. After you've done the summary and you've made sure that it's understood what the story is about, I personally think the next thing I would do is include a little line about why I find that story interesting. So if, for example, and this is actually something that did happen to me today actually, so this morning I was listening to BBC 5 Radio Live and I heard that the FCA have finally announced that they are going to be loosening some of the rules and the processes that are required in order to list on the London Stock Exchange. Now, why is that interesting to me? Because I'm currently a trainee sitting in debt capital markets. I do loads of listing on the London Stock Exchange. So it's important, especially in terms of my role, that I understand what the new requirements will be, what are the new things that I'm going to need to do as a trainee to make sure that our clients still get their bonds listed when they need them to be listed. So if you've picked up a story, I think it's good if you can include a little one-liner, whether it's verbally or written down, saying why you're actually interested in a particular story. Now that you've done that, this is where the meat of your answer comes in. It's really, really important to have 2 to 3, I would say. I say 3 just because 3 is a nice number. It's nice to do things in 3s, but again, depending on how long you have to answer the question or depending on how many words you have to write, sometimes 3 can be a bit too much. So 2 is generally a good number, but you want to have 2 to 3 ways that your particular news story has A, impacted the legal market, and then B, what challenges and or opportunities this may then present for the firm that you are interviewing or writing an application for. Finally, and this is the part which I said you may only want to do if you're actually at a face-to-face interview where you can actually speak to a person and have them respond to you, you then may want to actually ask a question about what they think about what you said or what they think about the news story and invite this to become a conversation as opposed to an interview. Now, those are the 4 steps in a really quick whistle-stop tour, but I'm not going to leave you there. I'm going to actually run through an example with you so I can show you how to implement these 4 steps in practice. Okay, so I've got my story up here on the screen for you, and I'm going to be looking at the FCA story that I was just speaking about. So we've got the UK regulator loosens rules to attract innovative listings to London. And by innovative, we're just talking about SPACs here. So those special purpose acquisition vehicles. And if you don't know much about SPACs, drop some comments down below and maybe I'll do another video about them, because they are all the rage at the moment, so you probably should know about them if you don't already know. Now, what is the core ethos of this story and what would I use as my summary? Now, for me personally, just because this is such big news, I think my summary will just be the main substance of the story, and that's what we've got right here highlighted in the article. The FCA have confirmed that it will allow a targeted form of dual-class share structures within the premium listing segment of the London Stock Exchange to encourage innovative, often founder-led companies onto public stock markets. Now, what does that actually mean? Because I think it is very key and important that in your summary, you're able to explain what your story is about to the layman. And what do we mean by the layman? Somebody who doesn't have a background in finance, someone who doesn't have a background in law. You want to make sure that you are actually understanding what the story is about. And one key way to do that is to be able to explain it to someone who would have no clue what you're talking about. That shows that you do have a really good understanding. So what does that summary that I just mentioned, what does it actually mean? It basically just means that the FCA have decided that they want to lessen some of the rules that they had around listing. Now, why are they lessening some of these rules? Because they want to make it more attractive to issuers. Now, why do they want to make it more attractive? Well, they want to encourage more people to come and list on the London Stock Exchange. So if I was in a face-to-face interview and I had an opportunity to kind of speak, then I would add all of that extra information. If this was a written application or maybe a video interview where I'm kind of capped at 90 seconds or whatever, I would condense all of that into maybe a single sentence, maybe a sentence and a half, just so that I'm not taking up too much time or too much space in my application. So hopefully that makes sense in terms of how you summarize your story. So that's step 1, you being able to summarize the story that you're actually interested in. Perfect, amazing, go you. Now for step 2, what did we have to do here again? Well, here is where we had to bring in a line or two to say why we're actually interested in this story. This is you being able to show that you've kind of gone a bit further than just reading the headline or just reading the summary of the story, and you've actually kind of gone through and read in between the lines. So if it was me personally, right now, my main interest in this story stems from the fact that I actually work in the debt capital markets team at the moment. So in all honesty, whatever the FCA decides to do in terms of the listing rules has a direct impact on the work that would be expected of me. Why is that? Well, as a trainee in the DCM team, I do often have kind of management oversight, and I say management in inverted commas because obviously I'm going to be supervised, but management oversight over making sure that at the moment, when it gets time to listing, certain things are done correctly. So for example, sending off the 48-hour documents, making sure that the listing hearing goes through the portal as it's meant to. All those sorts of things, you name it, that's what I as a trainee tend to do. So if some of those rules are going to be changing, or if some of the requirements that are needed are going to be changing, then I do need to stay on top of that to make sure that I know what I need to be doing next time I'm going to be doing a listing. But what if you're not actually working in a debt capital markets team at the moment? Or what if you're just interested in this because, I don't know, maybe you want to know a bit more about capital markets and you're aware that what the FCA does has a direct impact on capital markets? How would you kind of describe that in your answer? Well, this is where you would be able to show that you actually have an understanding of what a law firm does. If I was a prospective applicant and I had an interest in capital markets, but I didn't really know much about it, I would probably be saying something like, this story caught my eye because I understand that in the listing process, the FCA has the rules that they would like you to comply with. And therefore, if these rules are changing, then this might be because they're trying to increase the number of a particular type of listing that is occurring on the stock exchange. Maybe they're trying to do this to become more competitive. Maybe they're trying to do this to lessen the impact of Brexit. Throw in whatever reason you want, but it's you being able to show that you have an understanding of how something that a regulatory body has decided to do has a direct impact on the area of law that you're interested in. And then you're going to tie it together by bringing in what challenges / opportunities this could bring for the particular firm. So here, if the FCA's goal is to, I guess, increase the number of listings for a particular type of company, probably going to be a SPAC, then that's a clear opportunity for the firm. Maybe the firm can get more SPAC listings. If you're interviewing or applying for a firm that already does quite a bit of work in that area, then that's perfect for you because you can then show that you've actually done your research around that, and you can maybe throw in a deal that you already know that the firm has done in that particular area. So that's amazing for you. What was the final stage that I said you should only be doing if you're doing a face-to-face interview where you are speaking to another human being? Try and throw in a question. So after you've gone through and summarized your story to make sure that everyone understands what you're talking about, you've given your reason as to why you actually think that story means anything, and you've looked at 2, maybe 3 if you can, reasons and ways that this impacts the legal market and therefore the challenges and opportunities that this could present for a particular firm, throw the question back out there. Maybe ask the interviewer what they think. Ask them what they think about what you've said, or ask them if they agree or disagree with anything. Let this flow and become a bit more of a conversation, just so that it doesn't feel like a kind of rigid and structured interview. Remember what we said at the beginning. The legal industry is a client-facing industry, so it's all about human interactions and human relationships amongst all of the other things that we do, of course. That means that if you can in your interview, make it a little bit more conversational, that's probably going to work in your favour. So, the final section that I said I would be looking at is different ways that this question can pop up. Now, we started off with, tell me about a recent news article that has interested you. That's probably going to be one of your broadest questions that will pop up, and it's really key in that question that you still follow my structure. Why do I say this? Because sometimes you might be at a firm which will be a bit more specific with how they want their question to be answered. They may say something like, tell me about a recent news article that has interested you and how this can impact insert name of law firm. Now, this is because they want to make sure that you're focusing on step 3, for example, that I mentioned in my structure, where you're looking at how it impacts the legal industry and what challenges and opportunities that presents for the particular law firm. And the key thing for you to just remember is those 4, well, I guess 3, but 4 if you're doing it in person steps that I said right at the very beginning. First of all, summarize the story. Don't assume that the person who has asked the question knows what you're talking about, because they very well may not. And even if they do, they still want to see that you have actually read the article in full and you've read in between the lines. So it's important for you to summarize the story. Then make sure that you're getting your opinion in there. Make sure that you're saying why you actually think that story is relevant, why you think is interesting. Then look at how this can impact the legal market. We're looking for 2 to 3 reasons here, and also how this can present some challenges and opportunities for the firm that you are applying to. And then finally, and only if this is a face-to-face interview, try and turn this into a conversation. Throw the question back out there so it's not just you speaking all the time and it's not just your interviewer asking questions. Now, hopefully this has been a helpful insight into how to answer those commercial awareness questions so that you can seem like you're actually on job and you know exactly what you're doing. If there are any other questions or comments that you'd like to drop down below, please do so. And please do make sure that you like, comment and subscribe, and give me a follow on Instagram, as I post a lot more content there. Bye.